All right, everybody, welcome back. We are diving deep today.
To fallacies.
Oh, yeah,
Yeah.
you know it. And we've got a really sneaky one this time, too.
This one is super sneaky.
It really is. And I bet almost all of you listening have fallen for it at some point.
I would bet money on that.
Me, too. It's the anecdotal evidence fallacy. We're going to figure out what it is, how it works, and most importantly,
How to avoid it.
exactly, because this one pops up everywhere. Think about those health choices you make or the reviews you read before buying a new gadget.
Or even how you decide to raise your kids.
Oh, yeah, all those parenting decisions.
Anecdotal evidence is everywhere.
And the craziest thing is that sometimes those anecdotes really seem to make sense.
They do. They feel compelling.
Like that one source we had where someone was convinced they lost weight just by drinking green tea.
Classic example.
Yeah, and another where a parent was praising a specific teaching method that they thought was responsible for their kids' improved grades.
It can be so easy to draw those connections.
Way too easy. But that's why we're here today, right? To kind of unpack all this.
We are. And luckily, I think I have some insights into why we fall for these stories so easily.
Well, I am all ears. Let's hear it.
You see, for like thousands of years, right? Humans have relied on recognizing patterns and making quick decisions.
I mean, you had to back in the day.
Exactly. Picture our ancestors hanging out on the savannah.
Oh, yeah.
They didn't have time for double-blind studies to figure out if that rustle in the bushes was a tasty snack or something that wanted to eat them.
Makes sense.
They needed to make snap judgments based on, very limited info.
So basically, trusting those gut feelings and stories kept us alive.
Pretty much, but here's the thing.
What's that?
Now we are absolutely drowning in information, right?
Oh, yeah, way too much.
And those ancient instincts, they don't always lead us to the best decisions anymore.
So that's where understanding this anecdotal evidence fallacy comes in.
That's exactly it.
All right, so let's break it down. What exactly are we talking about when we say anecdotal evidence fallacy?
Okay, so at its core, it's this mistake we make when we confuse personal experience with actual scientific evidence.
So it's not that personal experiences are like lies or anything.
No, not at all. I mean, they're real experiences, right? But the key here is that they're unpublished. They're like a single story.
Unpublished, I like that.
Yeah, it comes from the Greek word anecdota, meaning unpublished.
That's a good word.
It is. And it helps to remember that these anecdotes haven't been rigorously tested or verified.
Ah, so just because your friend swears by this new diet doesn't mean it's backed by science.
Exactly. It's like that green tea example you mentioned earlier.
Right. Just because someone had a good experience doesn't mean green tea is a medical weight loss solution.
All right. Their experience is totally valid, but there could be like a million other things contributing to their weight loss.
Diet, exercise, maybe even genetics.
Exactly. And there's actually some interesting research on this.
Oh, really? Tell me more.
Yeah, there's this study published back in 2010 by Herschel and Westerterp Plantenga. And they found that while green tea might help a little with weight loss, its impact is mostly because of the caffeine.
And like you said before, caffeine is in tons of drinks.
Exactly. It's a perfect example of how one little anecdote can lead to these huge oversimplified conclusions.
It really shows how our brains can kind of trick us.
Oh, absolutely. Our brains love a good story,
I mean, who doesn't?
Think about the last time you heard a really juicy story. You probably felt all sorts of emotions, right?
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Well, that's your brain on narrative. And researchers have actually studied how stories affect our beliefs.
Really? So they can, prove that?
Yeah, Green and Brock did some amazing work on that.
Wow.
Basically, a good story can be way more persuasive than just dry data, even if that data is more accurate.
Oh, I've totally been there. You see a pattern and you just have to believe it.
You want to connect the dots even if the picture isn't complete.
And then, boom, confirmation bias kicks in.
Oh, yeah, that's the big one.
Tell me about it. You hear something that agrees with your existing beliefs,
Yeah.
and it's like total fireworks. It just clicks.
Yeah.
But we completely ignore anything that contradicts us.
It's like we're searching for evidence that supports us instead of looking at the whole picture.
Nickerson did a fascinating study on that back in '98.
Oh, yeah, classic.
And I feel like that explains so much about online arguments and stuff.
Oh, it's everywhere.
It really is. Okay, so going back to those examples we talked about earlier.
You mean the ones with the green tea and the teaching method?
Yeah, exactly. Like the parent who thought that one teaching method was like a miracle cure for their kids' grades.
That one was really interesting.
It was a heartwarming story, but potentially misleading.
Very much so. I mean, think about it. So many things affect a child's grades.
Oh, yeah, their home life, their teachers, their their own motivation.
Exactly. You can't just pinpoint one thing without doing some serious research.
And there's a journal called Educational Evaluation and Policy Analysis that talks about this a lot.
They're all about rigorous research and education.
And there was a study published in there back in 2007 by you and a bunch of other researchers.
Yeah, that one highlighted how easy it is to assume a teaching method caused better grades when really there might be no connection.
It's like correlation versus causation.
Exactly.
You always have to remember that.
Absolutely. All right, so speaking of misleading conclusions, what about that other source, the one with the phone?
Oh, yeah. The person who was completely loyal to one phone brand.
They swore by
And they're like, I've never had a single problem.
another classic anecdote.
Totally.
Yeah.
But even though their experience is real, it doesn't mean everyone else will have the same experience.
Right. Just because one person's phone didn't break doesn't mean the brand is flawless.
And Consumer Reports actually published a report in
I
2021.
remember that one.
Yeah. And they showed how much variation there can be in product reliability even within the same brand.
It's like judging an entire forest based on one tree.
You got it.
Yeah,
Okay, so I think we've covered a lot of ground here.
we have.
Any final words of wisdom for our listeners?
All right, so here's the takeaway. Anecdotal evidence is everywhere.
It's tempting.
Oh, it is. It's how we connect with each other.
It tells a good story.
But when you're making big decisions, things that impact your health or your finances or your kids' education,
Yeah, those big ones.
we need to be careful. We can't just rely on stories.
We have to go beyond the anecdotes and look for data.
Scientific research, large-scale studies, that kind of thing.
Look at the whole forest, not just the one tree.
Exactly. And remember, everyone's susceptible to this.
Even us.
Even us, our brains are wired for it.
So next time you hear a really compelling story, take a second and think,
Ask yourself, are there other things at play here?
what does the bigger picture look like?
Now that you all know about this fallacy, what are some things you might want to reevaluate?
Are there any beliefs you hold that are based mostly on anecdotes?
Maybe it's a supplement or a certain parenting technique.
Or even your political views?
What does the evidence say?
Ooh, that's a good one to think about.
It is.
Well, on that note, we'll wrap things up here. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.
Always a pleasure.
Until next time, keep those minds curious and stay vigilant against those sneaky fallacies.
There's always more to learn.
Always more to explore.
So much more.
See you next time.
Bye, everyone.